Hello and welcome to SaltWire today for Thursday, October 13th. I'm your host, Kate Walker. Province House was back in session today. It was the first sitting since an emergency session was called this summer to discuss MLA wages. The Progressive Conservatives confirmed today that the Speaker of the House, Keith Bain, has provided his resignation as Speaker effective April 1st, 2023.
I'm just trying to get the timing clear. When did Mr. Bain give you his resignation letter? Because the news release from your caucus says that he tendered his resignation. So when did that happen?
Well, listen, these are discussions that are just happening all the time. I don't want to get into private discussions and details.
I'm not asking for any private details, it's just a date.
What I'm saying is these are private discussions.
Is there a reason you can't give us the date?
Because they're private discussions. So we'll always maintain private discussions. That's the way I conduct myself.
What you heard from the Speaker when he was out here this afternoon, and Mr. Bain, I think is just as surprised. And so I think it speaks again to when you go against what this Premier has said or anything that he doesn't want to see, you get removed.
After a healthcare press conference yesterday, Premier Houston accused reporters of fabricating a story that he pushed for the Speaker to step down. Bain, who is PC MLA for Victoria the Lakes in Cape Breton, told SaltWire last week that reports the PC government was pushing for his removal were true, but that he didn't intend to resign. An investigation is underway after a Nova Scotia man was caught attempting to smuggle 10 illegal gun silencers into the country from China. He's also being investigated for possession of a firearm made with a 3D printer and the means to make more of the untraceable weapons. SaltWire's Chris Lambie is behind this story and has more on what Canada Border Services uncovered when they visited the man's home in Myers Grant.
They got a search warrant to go and look through this guy's house and the outbuildings of the house, and they found a damaged silencer. They found a 3D printed gun. They found all sorts of tools. They found 26 bundles of cash, and they found basically a 3D printer and the filament that people could use to make guns.
Officers say the number of suppressors found, which muffle the sound of gunshots, suggest possible resale, distribution, and trafficking. And this case is not unique. Authorities are seeing a rise in seizures of gun silencers flooding into our country.
About 5 years ago, they were only finding about 15 of these a year being imported to Canada. And now the numbers have jumped into the thousands. The Mounties put out a report saying, be on the lookout for these, and CABSA is opening a lot more packages, I presume. And they're finding these Chinese silencers, or mostly from China, they say. They're finding these coming in by the thousands.
It's also worth noting the man in Myers Grant does not have a firearms license. He's not facing any charges. An Afrocentric Community Hub will be developed in North Preston thanks to federal funding announced today. An investment of $121,443 is being made through the Canada Community Revitalization Fund, CCRF, for North Preston's Future Community Organization Society.
The young people in this country and in this region need to have space and opportunities to learn, to contribute, and to speak and work with their elders.
The money will go towards repurposing an existing building into an Afrocentric space for the community. Upgrades will include adding signs and historical monuments.
So this community space will serve for many different things within our community until we can get more additional space. We're going to have different things here offering workshops and training, employment, resume support, educational support. We have an ice cream stand here to support our kids there, meeting space, and just a social gathering, safe space for our community residents to come out and feel safe and just to be free and to just enjoy themselves.
The North Preston Future Organization will partner with the Black Business Initiative to deliver different programs that include leadership, financial literacy, and entrepreneurship. It will also house an information booth for visitors to learn about Afrocentric history and heritage. The Nocturne Art at Night Festival returns to the streets of Halifax and Dartmouth this weekend with more than 60 installations, exhibits, and performances united by the theme of legacies. SaltWire Network's Stephen Cook talked to the festival's co-curators about Nocturne's 15th anniversary edition, which runs from tonight through Saturday.
Nocturne, the street-level celebration of Nova Scotian artists and making art accessible in public spaces, has been taking over Halifax streets, structures, and galleries since 2008. It returns this weekend with 66 projects across the city in its first fully public incarnation since 2019. Nocturne continued through the pandemic with a mix of open-air installations and virtual programs, and this year's co-curators Stephanie Yee and Luxgau Habrish say the adaptable and evolving nature of the event has allowed organizers to incorporate what they've learned into this year's festival.
So what does it mean to live in this time right now, and like what does a festival look like within those parameters? And like, how do we take a lot of what we've learned from the brilliant programming that's been happening over the past few years, virtual stuff, like how do we apply some of it? So we have, for example, one fantastic project this year that is, it's an audio piece that you can download, and then it's kind of like a walking tour that you listen.
The installation they refer to is Lou Campbell's Infinite Exchange, which can be experienced through an audio download to your phone in the place that inspired it, Point Pleasant Park. Other interactive installations throughout Nocturne include Michelle Syllaboys projecting light boxes at the Halifax Central Library, acknowledging the devastating impact of Canada's residential school system. Each project is fascinating in its own right, but when taken in total over the next 3 days and nights, they underline Nocturne 2022's theme of legacies and how we must come to grips with our past in order to have a vision for the future.
Like, it was really important for us when choosing a theme that we could find something that would be kind of like that anyone could question, like, yeah, what is my legacy? What is my relationship to being here, like on this land, like my relationship to the work that I'm doing, to how I show up in my community and my neighborhoods.
Nocturne's organizers say the event's return to form this year is a celebration for the local artistic community and its supporters, and a show of resilience in the face of the challenges brought on by the past 2 years. Although it's a different experience for everyone who attends as they wind their way through downtown Halifax and Dartmouth, the return of the art event like no other is expected to generate equal amounts of awe, admiration, and emotion in its many locations.
Because we've been artists, but I've also been, like an audience member who has stumbled upon things, and the kind of like the way that Nocturne can create memories of a space that you never could have imagined, like that, and that stays with you after the event, even though Nocturne's 3 days, 1 day long, like it's quite amazing how it has that power.
A full schedule and festival map is available online at nocturnehalifax.ca. In Halifax, I'm Stephen Cook for the SaltWire Network.
It's time for Prices at the Pumps with Dan McTagg. Dan gives us his insight on where fuel prices may be headed at midnight in Nova Scotia.
I think we're looking at an increase of about 4 cents a litre, maybe a little higher in some cases, perhaps lower. It really depends on the forward averaging used by the NSUARB. But at the end of the day, it's going to be a question of just how far and how quickly these prices could rise. The diesel side, more concerning. We've talked about this last week. We have been signaling this for some time. Diesel's probably up about 6 cents a litre, maybe even 7. But at this stage, it looks like gasoline prices may be more stable than diesel. Watch diesel, watch home heating fuel, because it's going to go much, much higher than we see now. I note, for instance, in Newfoundland, liter of diesel is now $2.57 a litre. We're not far behind.
And Dan will be back next week on Prices at the Pumps. It's time now for a glimpse of today's Thinking Out Loud with Sheldon McLeod. Today, Sheldon is speaking with sports economist Moja Lander about moving ahead with the World Junior Hockey Tournament in Halifax and Moncton.
This is a big thing that the board has stepped down. That it's moving this conversation forward. But really, he says, we bid on this. There's only 2.5 months before this tournament starts. It would be nearly impossible for it to be rescheduled. What are your thoughts about the decision to move ahead with this event here in December into January in Halifax and Moncton?
I have a bit of a problem with it continuing in Halifax, because a lot of these allegations relate to the last time that Halifax hosted it. And there's a lot of question marks, not just over Hockey Canada, but also over the police and what went on in Halifax and how this was allowed to be shoveled away. So if this were taking place in some other city, even if it were Moncton, I'd be a little more comfortable with the idea. But the city has a certain level of culpability here, and I'm a little disturbed at their comfort going on with this and just saying, well, now that Hockey Canada's leadership has resigned, we're good to go ahead.
And for Sheldon's full conversation, head to the opinion section of SaltWire.com. Time now for the Atlantic Sports Wire, presented by Scott Squires.
Here's part 2 of my conversation with the Director of Athletics for St. Francis Xavier University, Leo McPherson, talking about a record 7 St. FX teams being ranked in the U Sports Top 10 in the same week. You've been the athletic director and part of St. FX for a long time, Leo, and as you said, this is a snapshot in time. But when you see that, how does that make you feel as someone that's been around the program for so long?
Well, days as a student athlete here and now in year 18 as the director of athletics. I guess it's a bit of a validation of what we're trying to do. We try to hire great people, support them. Important for me to get out of the way at times. We're very intentional about developing our student athletes. Our St. FX Student Athlete Leadership Academy is in year 11. We put a lot of emphasis on culture, developing team culture. We're actually partnered with Interlogic on measuring team culture. We develop leaders, as I mentioned, the Leadership Academy. So, and those leaders, those student athlete leaders and the coaching staff, they are the caretakers and creators of culture. And in a high performing culture, the culture will drive behaviors and those behaviors produce results. So the results that we're getting in the last number of years, again, validating the investments that we're making in this space. Because when you're a small school, we don't have the fiscal or human resources to compete with some of the larger schools in Canada. So we have to get really creative on how we're going to compete nationally, because that's our expectation, that we are nationally prominent and nationally competitive.
You can find out where and when the X teams are playing this weekend by visiting goxgo.ca. In Halifax, I'm Scott Squires for the Atlantic Sports Wire.
Ripped into the top corner. That is a class rich shot, but it's the build-up to the play, isn't it?
Thank you, Scott. On to weather now. To see what's coming up in the forecast, we're going to check in now with our weather specialist, Alistair Alders.
Thanks, Kate. Well, after a gray start this morning, it was another beautiful fall day here in Halifax. Lots of sunshine out this afternoon. I really hope you've been able to take advantage somewhat of the past few days, because we do have changes on the way for the all-important weekend. This evening, we'll have a few clouds and the temperature near 13 degrees, but we start to rise overnight. We start near 15 degrees on Friday morning, and the day likely starting off on a partly sunny note. As we go into the afternoon, a mix of sun and cloud, likely a day where the sun is kind of in and out behind the clouds, and we'll see the temperature heading up to 19 degrees. So another warm day on the way. It will start to get breezy, though, a southeasterly wind of 20 to 40 kilometers per hour. Now, I've been talking a lot about that slow-moving cold front that will be moving through this weekend. That does approach as we go into and through Saturday. So we have a chance of showers that develops Friday night into the first part of Saturday, and then steadier periods of rain with the risk of heavy downpours as we go through the second half of Saturday, likely continuing at least for the first half of Sunday. The model guidance has been very split on this system. It's going to be encountering a blocking high, which will dry up some of that moisture. So rainfall amounts are still to be determined. Of course, I'll be back here tomorrow with another update, just what you can expect. It will be a breezy weekend as well, so I hope you've been able to take advantage of the fall foliage, because I do think we'll lose a lot of leaves this weekend too. Of course, I'll be back here tomorrow with just what you can expect in your weekend outlook. Kate.
Thank you, Alistair. That's all for now. For more extended video and full online articles, stay tuned to saltwire.com. And you can find us on Instagram and Twitter at SaltWire Today. I'm your host, Kate Walker. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.